Welcome back to another episode of Clicks and Commerce. Sorry to leave you lonely. Life has been busy.
Yeah,
Franthoni, what's goody?
I'm here. I'm excited. I was excited to shoot another episode. It's been a while. I think this is
Uh-huh.
episode 13. So we're still here, guys. Still have a lot of exciting Google Ads stuff for you guys. How about you, Yana? How's your week been? I know you had some big changes on your end.
So my excuse is I'm actually engaged and preparing to get married. So I've been running around cross country, like literally different countries to go and meet with my fiance's relatives and also have her meet my family as well. So that's my excuse for not being available for the recording. I don't know what a bachelor like Frantoni's excuse is. So hey, what's been happening with you?
Man, I just been focusing on work. I guess, time passes. I guess it's kind of like the summer energy where things tend to slow down. You have the weather, so I don't really have a real excuse, I would say. I just kind of
Because
slowed
I
down
thought
on
you were
my
going to
end.
take over the whole
I
thing
mean,
yourself. I thought when I was gone and busy, it was going to be the Frantoni show. And
we'd keep we'd keep an episode or two. Nah, man, it wouldn't be the same without you.
yeah, thank you for saying that. It feels good to be back. So let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to be talking about Google Ads and CMOs and that relationship between Google Ads
Yeah,
practitioners, Google Ads agencies, marketers that are external, and integrating with within teams, within businesses that have their own teams and have their own CMOs. So what exactly is that like? What's the relationship like? Because I strongly believe that no platform works alone anymore. You need to be present on multiple channels. But because you have so many different agencies or people working on specializing in these different things, for a long time we've been working in silos where we're just like, we're this one channel, we do this one thing and working separate from all of these other teams. But we've come to a stage where all of these different moving parts now need to work together. And how exactly do you work with those teams and also help CMOs do their job and also be a CMO, a mini CMO or external CMO,
yeah.
fractional CMO, so to say, within these teams and make sure that everything is working together. Franthony, what do you think about this topic?
Yeah, I think it's an important topic for, whether that be Google Ads practitioners, Meta Ads practitioners. We're going to focus on Google Ads because, yeah, that's our bread and butter. But yeah, like you said, the market has evolved. The relationships that, brands and business owners have with agencies has evolved as well. You're expecting
Mhm.
more from whether you're a freelancer, whether you're an agency, you're a consultant. Your job is not just to make Google Ads work and be like, okay, I did my job. If things are burning or breaking down in the other platforms, that's not my issue, right? It's not saying that you have to be involved necessarily, but you need to understand how the success of these other platforms, in particular Meta, right, influences your success in Google Ads. And I feel like that's what, in my experience as well, CMOs want to hear from their practitioners, not just, like I said, working in silo, just focusing on Google Ads. I think it's the cross-platform collaboration is more important now than it was, 5, 10 years ago.
That is very true. It almost feels irresponsible to be like, we do this one thing and we do it great. So let's just focus on that while the business itself is burning. Because at the end of the day, if the client overall is losing money, it doesn't matter how well your campaigns are running and how much money that you're making for them. Overall, the business closes down because all of these different parts are not working well together. One of the things that I have been focusing a lot on lately is building partnerships with different agencies that focus on meta, for example, or that focus on email marketing, where we don't necessarily want to do everything. We're good at
Yeah,
what we're good at, but it's also great to have a really strong workflow with people whose process you understand and systems you understand. But sometimes the companies already have people that they work in-house with. So you also need to have your own systems or workflow where you integrate with those teams and really reach out to them and have conversations where you're like, ultimately, what we want is them for the client to thrive and to survive and for their business to grow. So what is it exactly that you do? How is it that you do it? And start having those conversations where you put together different linkages for the benefit of the business, because you can still lose a client even if you are doing great. I've had so many clients leave where you're just like, but this month I've made you like 300,000. I've made you 5x what you put in. what's happening, and then they're like, it's not you. Like there's something happening in the back end, and all of that I've realized can be avoided if we have those conversations up front about who is
Yeah,
exactly is it that, well, what's your marketing stack like, and who exactly are you working with? Can I reach out to them? Let's connect on Slack, and having a coffee with those guys. It's as easy as that. Have
yeah.
you felt the same on your end?
Yeah, I actually have, especially like I said, referring back to the Meta guys. I found in my experience that Meta performance for some brands influences your Google performance. What I mean by that is that you have social first brands, right? So a lot of the brands that I work with, their budget split is 70-30. So 70% of the budget is going to go to Meta, then you have the 30% that goes to Google, right? So if they're spending the bulk of their budget on Meta, it's important that, when you're running Google Ads, you know what's going on. Like, okay, we're scaling currently in Meta. So if we're scaling in Meta, that means that things are moving well in the business. We may have some potential to scale it in Google, and just balancing your budget so that the overall MER can meet the client's goal. And that's been the biggest shift that I've made is,
Quick
when I'm
one for
speaking to
some of
these
the
Meta
people
teams.
that don't know what MER is.
Yeah,
Yeah, real quick, just break it down. MER for
for sure.
non-technicals.
So MER, marketing efficiency ratio. So it's the sum of your marketing spend divided, the sum of your revenue divided by your marketing spend, and that allows you to know, how efficient your ad dollars are being spent. And notice how I said MER and not ROAS, right? So that's the shift, right? When you're thinking about cross-platform and how everything ties together, you're not just looking at a single channel ROAS, because to your point, you can have a fixed ROAS in Google, but if the Meta team is running at a zero point 0.8 return on ad spend, the overall MER is not going to look good. And then the client is probably going to, and they're probably going to cut Google, because for some reason, a lot of clients believe that Meta serves them more than Google. That's a topic for another day. The main shift is in the KPIs that you're looking at. So now when I'm running Google Ads and, I speak to clients, I'm like, okay, what is your MER goal? Okay, it could be a 20%, it could be, 2x, 3x. And then I'm going to speak to the Meta team and talk about the budget split. Okay, if Meta is generating the bulk of the budget, we're excluding email, right? Because email represents 30% of the revenue anyways, right? Or we're specifically looking at the platforms that are spending. And usually it's Meta, Google, then you have TikTok, and then you have Bing, but these are the big boys. So the conversation is around how do we allocate budget so that we can hit the client's goal? Because if the client's not happy, no one's going to be happy. So, what I would do is tell the team, okay, I'm going to spend this amount, and that gives you let's say it's $100,000 budget, right? I'm gonna say, okay, let me take 20,000 in Google, and I'll give the 80K to Meta, because I know the Meta team can hit the KPIs, can help the client scale, and then my job in Google is to make sure that the 20K that I'm spending is super efficient, right? And by efficient, I'm not saying branded conversions, super efficient on non-brand, so that when the Meta team scales aggressively and we combine the spend, we can hit the overall goal, right? So it's actually in your favor, or the opposite. Sometimes it's the opposite. I'm like, hey guys, drop the spend, because I believe there's more opportunity here. So it's more of, working together than working against each other, which was something that was common in the past, where it's like Meta's doing better, Meta versus Google. Like it's a clickbait title, right? Meta versus Google, but the truth is
Exactly.
it's Meta and Google, or Google and Meta, right? Yeah.
True. I think one thing we've been consistent about when we've been pushing Google Ads is how Google overall is really good for the full funnel, because it's got videos for top of funnel, and then it's got your middle of
Yeah.
funnel, and then in terms of search is really good for high intent, because someone is literally typing, "I'm looking for a golf bag." So they're either in the research
Yeah.
stage, or they're looking to buy, where they like, which one is the best? What's the best price? So it's really good for all parts, but that doesn't mean that it's the best for all parts. It's actually the best for high intent. It's really growing in its capacity
Yeah.
for top of funnel. For what almost 4 years in, we keep on talking about YouTube Shorts and YouTube videos, YouTube video ads as being really great for bringing in new traffic, but people are
Yeah.
still very, very, very cautious in exploring it. I don't know for what reason, but people are not cautious about, they don't have those same concerns when it comes to Meta. And Meta is really good
Oh man,
at
man.
catching you when you're unaware, like when you're scrolling on Instagram or scrolling on your feeds and just interacting with whatever it is that you're interacting, and seeing something for the first time, and then putting that thought into your mind. Or rather, sometimes when you have that feeling like, I was just thinking about this thing, and then it shows up. So it's very good at that top of funnel aspect. And we
Yeah,
cannot hate on that. Then there's also
we can.
TikTok, right? And TikTok is a whole different demographic of young people. In fact, no, at this point, it's not even young people because my parents are on TikTok,
Everyone's
my
on
aunties
TikTok
are on
now.
TikTok.
Yeah,
So a
mine
lot of
as
people, I'm
well.
personally not on TikTok because I'm afraid of that algorithm. That's
Same.
how good it is. I fear the TikTok algorithm because once I'm an obsessive person. So if it gets to know me and knows what I'm obsessed with, I'm afraid of being in a 3 hour loop of just scrolling, watching videos on how to improve performance of this campaign and that. So I avoid
Yeah,
TikTok, but it's really good at keeping you on the platform. And that's something that you would want to work with in terms of your top of funnel, right? And in terms of getting somebody into your pipeline and getting somebody you ready to consider your brand. And just to finish off or add on to what you were saying, those titles about this platform is the best. Forget about all of them. These other platforms are just clickbait. We really need to work with each other for the benefit of each other. First of all, for the client, of course, and then even for ourselves, selfishly, for keeping them long term. Because if the business fails, then we failed. No case study, and obviously no money. So yeah,
no referral
I,
either,
I
right?
think we are in very in high agreement in terms of having to work with collaboratively with different teams. But now we get into the conversation of how exactly is the best way of doing that. A lot of people are used to working a certain way with their own personal teams, and it's very hard for you to then come in and extract information for them. Some people are really competitive as well in terms of what they're
Yeah,
doing because they
that's a
want to show
challenge.
the client that we are the one that's bringing in the most ROI. Having those conversations, I'll give my take on it, but have you had such experiences working with external teams or working with somebody that does something that's completely different to you and trying to show that this is not a competition? And yeah, that whole experience of working with somebody
Yeah,
who's on a different channel.
yeah. It's usually not as simple, if I'm being honest, because there's a lot of ego involved, and I feel like that's the limitation when it's two separate teams rather than when it's, for example, under the same house, like, one big agency, they offer all these services. And that's actually why full service agencies, are still existing, right? Even though you may see a lot of talks about, you want to specialize and just provide one service. Like, yes, that's good, right? It's, you have people that need that, specific platform knowledge. But, as a brand grows, having a freelancer in every department, it can work if you have one person steering that wheel, right? So, like, going back to the head of growth, the CMO, what I found is that someone has to swallow their ego, right? So, if you're the top spending platform, it's typically not going to be you, right? You're going to continue doing what you're doing, but there needs to be that bridge that needs to be created, and sometimes it's as simple as, like you said earlier, jumping on a call, like, hey, I see you guys are doing this on Meta. I'm doing this on Google. Like, how can we help out each other? And some of the ways the Meta team can help you out is specifically in the creatives, right? Because that's what we've been doing, for example, on YouTube Shorts. That's where the Meta team helps us out. It's like, okay, take your best performing creatives from Meta and then, upload them to YouTube unless you're spending $10,000 a month or $30,000 a month on YouTube. So that's one, reaching out. But working with external parties, I haven't found a clear way to make it work every time. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the other team, like you mentioned, is very competitive, very confidential, and then sometimes they also want to take the account from you as well, right? Because usually every Meta team or every Google team has a Meta guy or a Google guy. So it's often very hard, if I'm being honest. Like, you tend to focus on your own thing, but that's where the CMO comes in, right? And that's why, we're here today to talk about, okay, how can you individually, as the Google team, help out the CMO? Because when you're jumping on the call, you're not on the call with the other party, you're on the call with him. So, like I said, looking at the overall MER and understanding how your r- platform in platform ROAS actually influences that overall top number. But, back to your question, I've tried reaching out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm curious to hear your experience, if you had maybe more luck than I have in those relationships.
All right, so this is where I come in. It's pretty simple. How to get buy-in from different teams that are working on different channels and getting that cohesion. But it's knowing how exactly or when exactly to start that conversation. So the CMO is definitely central. If there's no CMO, then that's the founder of the company. It all starts on the sales call. So
Yeah.
even before you start managing, right? As a person who's had the multiple experiences like this, I've had, I think last year I even had a certain client who had a meta team that was so aggressive. Like they really wanted us out of that account, of managing that account. That was actually the only client we lost last year when we had our 97% retention rate, because well, they had been working with the client for years, and
Incredible.
we came in, we did really well within a period of like 6 weeks. And I think they felt scared that we would take over, though we came in to compliment them. But I realize it all starts on the sales call. Like you get the buy-in from the CMO, the owner, right at the beginning, and you tell them that when you're asking them what other marketing efforts are you currently doing, when they tell you
Yeah.
that we've got a Clavio, we've got an agency that does our Clavio, we've got an agency that does SMS, and or we're working with these guys that do Meta, or we've got our internal person, you make it a priority that can you have us have a sit down and have a conversation about how exactly what it is exactly that they're doing, so that we're also brushed up on it, and them giving them because they are the CMO, they essentially are overseeing all of these different marketing efforts. So
Yeah.
one, you're giving them their respect and allowing them to perform that role of overseeing everything, and you are also then coming in from that technical angle and asking the technical questions to these different teams while they're there, and also showing these other teams that no, we're not here to take over. Where we are the new guys that are
Yeah.
here. We know our place, and what we want to do is to help the client. So we really want to learn from you, and showing that you are a collaborator and not a competitor. So you really need to hold your hat, or swallow your pride and be that person that kind of, despite how good you are, minimize yourself, give respect to the CMO, and allow them to do that role. And when you do meet those teams that've been there longer than you, they've seen things that you haven't seen, and it's only
Yeah.
beneficial for you to get more data from them and what they've seen, rather than repeat certain mistakes and then have the CMO come in and say, yeah, we tried that 6 months ago and it didn't work with this demographic or with this group. Ask them to have a sit down with those people, and it'll be all the better for you, rather than trying to reach out by yourself. I feel like that's where the problems start, where you don't mention it on the sales call that
Yeah.
once we're working together, we want to meet these guys, and we also want you to be part of the conversation so that everything flows together. Literally yesterday, we had a conversation with, I had a sales call where they actually brought in their SEO and the person doing their Google ads currently, because we're now offering an AI service. So actually told them that I've seen the work that they've been doing. I've actually seen their ads, and I was really impressed by the ads that they're doing. And to be honest, I actually was. They're doing a really good
Yeah. It
job.
was
So to show that
genuine.
I'm not here to take your job or anything, I'm just here to help and make sure that all of us get the best outcome. And if they get more money, we get more money. Everybody wins. Champagne and cocaine for everyone, as Professor Galloway said.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point that you mentioned on reaching out to the CMO. That's something in my experience that I haven't done. I've worked with external agencies a few times. Mainly it's under the same umbrella. So if you're contracting for a specific agency and they run meta ads, then it's easier. But I'll definitely take that note for the next have a CMO, because yeah, in my experience it's really hard. And another challenge that you have with the teams. I have some guests here leaving the the hotel I'm at.
Yeah, it's
Another
okay.
challenge you have is you mentioned the SEO team, and now I would love for us to kind of just briefly talk about the collaboration between the SEO team and the paid team. Because as much as I feel like the meta team, can give you a hard time, I feel like the SEO team, when they're on your side, it's fine. Like, okay, but when they're not on your side, it tends to be complicated because they tend to just blame all of their unsuccessful campaigns or strategies on the paid side. Like, oh, we're not hitting revenue. It's like, oh, it's surely the PPC. And I'm like, no, if we're only doing meta and if you're only doing Google ads and SEO, it's not us. It's usually either you or us. And funny, I had this experience this week. I have a client. We decided to stop running meta ads for them, right? They're in the dark color niche. And I'm back in December, I was like, let's stop running meta ads. It's not helping us out. Let's just focus on our bread and butter. Let's do Google ads. I'll run your Google ads for you. We'll continue doing that and double down on your SEO team. It's been going great. They're actually able to improve the results year over year. They're actually up 12% year over year. It's not a big
Hey.
improvement, but when you take into account that they've been in decline for the past 2 years back to back, and this is the first year where they're actually up. It's actually significant. In the last 28 days, they lost 30,000 impressions on their top collection, right? Under top keyword. The brand, the marketing manager was just telling me like, hey, I feel like something's wrong. Like we're not seeing, I'm investigating. Yeah, ask your SEO team. The SEO team says, hey, nothing's wrong. It took me going inside the search console, actually pointing out, okay, this is not working, and then correlating that to the success that we have in PPC, because for that same collection, we experienced a drop in the PPC side as well. Right? And then I jumped on the call. I was like, hey, your SEO team needs to actually investigate this, because the reason they experienced a drop is because they had the number one position for that keyword, and they dropped to the ninth position. So we will really derank them. And I pointed it back to the SEO team because I was like, hey, that's not my fault. And ultimately, it was the SEO team's fault. But the other way around, those guys just always give me a hard time. I find that those are the ones that I have a
I
love
don't
and hate
want peace.
relationship when working with them.
I don't want peace. I only want violence. You came in with the violence. You were like, hey, 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 hey. I'm doing no, but that's an important aspect to raise where there's there's possibly and probably going to be conflict because you've got different working styles and different setups, different
Yeah.
SOPs. So conflict does kind of come up. But at the end of the day, it's also realizing that it's nothing personal. It's all business.
Yeah.
So you're going to be wrong sometimes. They're going to be wrong sometimes. And just being able to take accountability for when you're wrong also helps and makes it easier to fix that thing and make whatever is going wrong to become correct, and even get support from teams like us or different teams like that. One way that I'm personally working around it is having my own SEO people as part of my team. So you did mention that full service agencies are still there for a reason, and I personally realized that yes, Google Ads is, for me, it's still the best, though. GPT is
Number
really
one.
coming for that crown in terms of because it's a whole. Then we can have a different episode about this,
That's a whole other
about
episode.
the
That's
buying journey for AI search, and how a person comes to your site
yeah.
having already made that decision where they're already convinced and they trust ChatGPT. The whole conversation for a different day. But yeah, where I've realized that it's good to specialize in one channel. It's great to specialize in one channel and be really good at it. But there's a simple workaround to having great performance on different channels. And it's just, well, for me personally, as an agency owner, it's just hire the best people that do that thing. I don't need to be, I know Google, I'm good at Google and also AI search, but they're people that are better than me. So it's just a matter of getting that person and then fitting them into your system and training them on your SOPs and all of that, and then working with the next guy who does Google. So I have also kind of shifted from the thought that you need to be super specialized, especially from an agency perspective. Practitioners, definitely. If one person is really good at Google or they're good at Google and Meta, then that's great.
Yeah.
They get to get more reps in. But from an agency's perspective, you just get that person, integrate them into your system, and then they provide that. So that's one way where we kind of mitigate that a bit, where even if we have conflict with an SEO person, even if we're not doing SEO for that particular account, we can always reach out to our SEO person and say, is what they're saying true though? Just like you did, because
Yeah.
likely
That's
you also know a bit of SEO. So they don't just get to be like, no, from an SEO perspective, you can then just be like, all right, my head of SEO will take a look as well. So yeah,
yeah.
that's one workaround.
Exactly.
Throw money at it.
Yeah, and in my experience, I'm usually coming in as like, yeah, just managing Google Ads, or like just consulting on the Google Ads side. And even myself, I've realized that as the industry continues to evolve, like, yes, it's good to have that one platform where when you come in, you're just gonna cook, right? But in terms of the knowledge, you need to have different, like, a broad spectrum of knowledge, and even transition more into kind of like a growth consultant, and more and more become a T-shaped marketer, right? I thought that was the original idea, and I think it's yeah, more important
Miles
now than
McNair, I
ever.
think.
He
Miles
made a
McNair.
T-shaped Google Ads. Yeah, he made a T-shaped Google Ads specialist, where you talk about tracking and everything, and the different areas of Google Ads. Because there is a lot of areas in Google Ads when you go down into it. But specifically, as a Google Ads practitioner, if I'm thinking, how can I stay relevant in 5 years? Well, I ran meta ads before, so I understand the concept. But in the last 2 years, the meta ads game has changed a lot. Like, it's not just media buying. And now trying to dive into the creative aspect, right? Understanding creative, how that works, and into understanding email, doubling down on SEO. So I have a lot of like general SEO knowledge because it's something I'm really passionate about. I think once I understood SEO, it helped me get better at Google. But the executional and the technical side of SEO, I'm not involved, and that's usually where I call out the bluff of a lot of the SEOs, especially some of the clients I work with, because when I hear the recommendations and I'm like, what? I don't do the technical side, but in theory, it's not like that. So I encourage everyone, practitioner owners as well, to just dive into these other platforms, right? For example, I've never worked on TikTok. I personally don't like TikTok as an ad platform. But hey, maybe in the next 6 months, I'll probably have to, just see how it works so that we can stay relevant. And like you said, from an agency perspective, you want to be able to help out your client as much as possible, right? And that comes by bringing other people. And funny enough, I've actually seen, I know who specifically I'm talking about, a few specialized Google Ads agency that in the last 2 years transitioned to full service, renamed, rebranded the agency, and made all of these changes. And that's a shift that I've been seeing more and more. You have guys that just did Google Ads, and then all of a sudden they're
I've been
talking
seeing a
about,
lot of current Google Ads agencies looking for CRO people because you realize that sending traffic to a landing page that isn't converting
I
doesn't work
mean,
at all. We've also got a
we need a
CRO person.
CRO. We need a CRO
Yeah,
episode. We need a CRO episode because that's a whole topic. But this is for the
conversion rate
CMOs, right?
optimization to
So
those that don't know what CRO is.
yeah, we keep using acronyms, but that's the idea, right? Thinking back of the CMOs. So like we said, this is for the CMOs. This is for the head of growth. This is for the practitioners who are reporting to these higher ups and the brands. And we're just giving you the way of thinking, like how should you approach it. You're coming in as a Google Ads agency or Google Ads practitioner. Do not think that as long as you're getting a 3x ROAS that you're going to be safe, or that you won't receive any hits. you know get involved into just find out what they're doing, how they're doing. Hey, you spent X on Meta, this is the ROAS. See how email is doing, because the fact that you have outside knowledge, you can pinpoint something that maybe they're not seeing, and that could help you influence your return on ad spend. Typically, one example for that is the brands that have a long sales cycle. So that typically your high end B2B, like high AOV products. Email marketing is your best friend in those cases, right? So the more you understand that, the easier it's going to be to deliver results in Google. And also, there's a certain amount of stress that you just won't carry because you understand what's in your control and what's outside of your control. And to your point as well, Yana, in terms of owning the responsibility when things are not working, my approach is I talk about what's outside of my control, talk about what's inside my control, and then talk about what I can do within, what I control, obviously, right?
Setting
Because
expectations.
like you said, sometimes the truth is that sometimes if the brand experienced a 10% dip or 20% dip in revenue, it can be due to some shifts in the algorithm. You tighten up the target cost per conversion, and Google spent less. So there are times when it's PPC's fault as well. So we're definitely not here to say that it's only the other department's fault. But
Yeah,
that's the way of
true.
thinking, at least.
Yeah. Just to shift the conversation a bit, it wouldn't be clicks and commerce if we didn't talk numbers, if we didn't talk metrics. So when you're working with the CMOs and founders, what exactly are we looking at in terms of metrics, and what are the metrics that matter? I love that you mentioned MER earlier, because that's a very important
Yeah.
metric where you're looking across different channels at what's working and what's not. And sometimes if you see that one channel is lacking, it's easier to then have a conversation about how exactly to diagnose those problems and fix those problems, or should you just remove that channel completely? I personally am of the thinking that if I come into a company and install and run their Google ads and it's not working, then it's only responsible to be like, we tried, but either we're not the ones for this, or Google Ads is just not the best for you. And the reason we believe that is this, this, and this. It's
Yeah.
unethical to continue being like, no, let's keep on trying when it's clearly not working. There's certain situations where One thing could be stopping it, could be stopping the Google ads from working, and you can work on that until that thing is fixed and then reinstall the Google ads. But you also gain more trust and your trust and goodwill by pointing those things out and not just being like, I need to extract as much money as possible before these guys go to the next client. I think it's
Yeah,
not very many
that's
people
not the
that
way.
think that way, but ultimately that's the way that I feel it should be. So MER is part of that. But then we also have metrics like blended customer acquisition cost. You know how much it is to get a client on your specific channels. It might be 5,000, or if it's a high, if
Yeah,
it's a really expensive product, or $5 within Google. But how much is it costing on Meta? How much is it costing on TikTok? And all of those different variables. Blended customer acquisition cost is one of them. Lifetime value.
yeah, important
I'll
one.
open it up to you and not finish them all.
I
But
mean,
yeah.
yeah, you can you can flesh them out. Like you said, LTV, blended ROAS. MER is a big one. One metric that since I started running ads, now it's been 5 years. It's only been the last 2 years that I've seen more and more people talk about it, whether that be on LinkedIn or like on just general videos. Is contribution margin. And I feel like that's a very
Mm,
recent one that you
mm.
know that's I feel like that's the one where now you have certain people that flex like, hey, if you guys are not talking about contribution margin, then you're missing out. And I feel like that's a really important one, but that's not necessarily, that's more channel specific, I feel at the same time, right? Like, okay, how much margin are your ads actually contributing to? But that's a really, really important one. And still inside of the blended. So like blended contribution margin, like how much margin are your ads actually contributing to? I feel like that's an important one. Have you seen or like heard anything around that specific KPI?
I'm actually obsessed with it because I'm a very unit economics obsessed person. So
Here we go.
contribution margin, I believe, is actually more important than ROAS. So I am part of those people on LinkedIn that are always shouting that your margins, like it doesn't even
It's
margins
important.
sometimes are even more important than revenue, because you could be making a
Yeah.
million and spending a million and getting zero. But your contribution margin, how much are you actually making in terms of profit? How much are you making on top? You could have a product that you sell for $300 and gives you $50 in profit, and then you could have a product that sells for $200 but gives you $100 in profit, and it's easier to market. Then why don't we go with the cheaper one that moves more volume? So contribution margin is very important. But also, now that we're talking about these different channels,
Yeah.
people buy differently on different channels. So one product might have a high contribution margin on Google and a low on Meta. And if you don't have those conversations with the other teams and have a sit down with the CMO and see how all of these things are working, then you might not know to talk to the Meta guys and be like, hey, we're reducing spend on this particular product, but we see that it's doing really well there. So can you guys increase spend over there? And then contribution margin overall goes up because every platform is firing on all cylinders. And yeah, thank you for raising that one.
Yeah,
It's usually my calling card. I don't know how I forgot about it, but yes, contribution margin
that's
is so
that's that
important, and
that's
now
that's really the
blended
important one.
contribution margin as well.
Yeah, because that's what we need to talk about. And still on your point, you mentioned LTV. I think, like you said, not everyone converts the same way. You also have to take it into account purchase path, right? So someone may come through Meta, then do a research on Google, then they'll come on your website, they'll sign up to your newsletter, and then ultimately, email will get that conversation. And to your point about having all platforms fire on all cylinders, I would say have every platform perform where it's best, right? So you were mentioning some cases where Google isn't the best channel. Usually that's in the fashion industry. In my experience, unless it's like a big fashion brand and they have a lot of exposure, a lot of organic, if it's a young and up and coming fashion brand that was created in the last 2-3 years, you're usually gonna have a really hard time in Google because you're gonna compete with Shine, you're gonna compete with Lululemon, even compete with Temu, Nike, all of those guys. And it's usually really expensive. But what I often see is that those brands work really well on Meta, right? So you don't want to have Google trying to get new customers when in reality Google just has to capture the warm traffic, right? So have every platform focus on where it's actually generating the best results for your brand. So your point about shifting budgets between one platform to another, that's actually how you influence the overall unit economics. And I think in terms of like KPIs that combine all platforms, I think those are the main ones. Maybe I'm missing a few, but like we said, blended ROAS, blended CAC as well. Yeah, blended CAC, CAC, cost per acquisition, finding out how much it costs you in total. We talked about that. Contribution margin, LTV, conversion path. These are all the KPIs that, regardless of the platform that you're managing, you should be aware of for that specific brand, because that's going to allow you to understand, okay, out of this, I don't know, 20% MER, how much am I actually contributing to? And how does my media buying affect those KPIs? And that's really, I think, the mindset shift that helps you grow.
Shout out to Triple Whale on that one. If you're in the e-com space, Triple Whale might actually be your best bet. Hey, sponsor us. But yeah, you do need, so when you get to a certain, yeah, true, a sponsor, but when you get to a
Shout
certain
out, yeah.
stage of revenue and also running ads on multiple channels, you're going to need a third party tool to actually be able to monitor or measure these different KPIs and what's correctly contributing to your margins and to your profits and to your spend, all of that. You need to track it through a third party platform because, unfortunately, and we've mentioned this before. Go to the last episodes. We mentioned a lot of these things. We
Yeah,
were
a lot of these
consistent.
things we
Yeah.
cover.
The thing about individual platforms is they over index how much they contribute to the actual return on ad spend or margins and profits and all of that. Every platform wants to claim that they're the one that's contributing the most. So once you get a third party platform, they actually show that Google is contributing this much, TikTok is contributing this much, Facebook, Meta, all of that are contributing specific amounts. So you do want to have a third party platform dashboard. Triple Whale, I know, also has AI integration. I promise we're not sponsored by them, but though I
Yeah,
am kind of
the
a
top.
partner,
They're one of the
I'm part of
top
their
ones, at
partnership
least.
program. So yeah, I will be honest about that. And I do use the tool, so that's why I do recommend it, but they're not our sponsors. But yes, they also do have AI integrations now where they make it easier to track how much each platform is contributing. So that's a very important tool, or even a different tool, but it's very important to have that
Yeah.
a third party view as well.
Yeah, and I agree. And yeah, shout out to Triple. I'll also mention Hyros because I use Hyros, not a sponsor. Great tool. But one thing that Triple offers, and this is once again, I mean, we're just teasing a bunch of episodes, guys, is the channel overlap, and this still goes into what we're talking about cross-platform, collaboration, and like I said, this is for our next episode, but just to talk about the fact that in some accounts, the revenue you're generating from Google actually really came from Meta. And I'm going to pinpoint one Google product that does a really good job of just stealing conversion, and that's PMax. Right. So we can talk about that in the next episode, but we often see that I've seen this in my accounts. Meta does well, PMax does well. Meta does bad, PMax does bad. And having a Google ad structure that's dependent on Meta success is not good for you. And so, like I said, that's the next episode. We can talk about the collaboration in terms of like how to not rely on Meta for your Google Ad success in specific industries, right? Because it's a case by case as well.
Yeah. So we could go on forever about this topic because
Yeah.
there's so many different aspects of how to help CMOs and how to integrate with different teams. But we have to call it an episode. It's great to be back. Franthoni, any closing remarks?
Those remarks, I would say, guys, check out the last 12 episodes we made. We've really been diving into some interesting topics, especially the ones that some of them we briefly talked about them today. So if you want to get deeper into Meta, Google, AI, just check out the next episode and tune in for the future episodes because, like Yana said, we're back and we have some really exciting topics to bring to you guys.
And we wouldn't be YouTubers or podcasters if we didn't say like, subscribe, follow
Comment.
us. Also follow us on our LinkedIn, our individual LinkedIn's, which are linked in the comments or description below, where we talk about this stuff almost daily and super frequently. And keep on watching, and we love everybody who's supporting us. Thank you very much, and
Appreciate you
see you
guys.
on the next one.
See you guys.